What's going on, everybody? C4 here. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at my top 10 tight ends for the upcoming 2021 NFL Draft. I'm excited to get into it. I mean, the tight end number one is probably not going to shock or surprise anyone, but there's some really good value. This is a year that I think is maybe not so much at the top end, but if you're going to be looking for value, third, fourth, fifth round could be a great year to grab yourself a tight end. Also, behind the scenes, we are getting ready for a brand new Madden series to drop on Saturday. Don't want to spoil too much. We'll just say Saturday, Madden 2001. That's all we're going to say. I'm working on it. These, draft rankings aren't super strenuous for me to record because they're all essentially information that's already posted on my Patreon, but they're giving me the opportunity to work more the last couple days and for today and going into Friday behind the scenes to get Saturday's video ready for you guys. I think you're going to enjoy it, but hopefully you enjoy these tight end rankings. Let me know what you think about them in the comment section below. So number 10 for our tight ends, we're going to start with BRILEY Moore, 6'4", 240 pounds, out of Kansas State, formerly Northern Iowa. In 2018, he was one of the best tight ends in all of FCS at over 500 yards and 4 touchdowns. Then, because of COVID, all that stuff, ended up in 2020 going to K-State, where obviously there probably wasn't a great familiarity with the offense and the playbook, and he was still able to go out there, 22 catches, over 300 yards, 3 touchdowns in a class that doesn't have amazing depth day 3. I think the value is more so day 2. Probably more good enough athlete, a 902 RAS, put up very good explosives in the vertical and the broad, 4.66 in the 40. I think there's enough there for him to be a late round selection. I currently have a 7th round grade. I think you're getting some versatility. He's kind of player that you can line up at tight end. You can line him up in the slot, can kind of move him around there, has natural hands. Some durability concerns, had some injuries at Northern Iowa. A lot of scout reports said he had some nagging injuries going along at K-State. Potentially at his ceiling will be good as he ever is, but I think Jeff Heuerman out of Ohio State spent some time. He's been productive, been able to stick around on rosters. Most notably the Denver Broncos. I think that's a fair comp for there. And if you do need potentially a tight end 3 at the back end of your roster, BRILEY Moore in the day 3 could be a prime target. Tight end number 9, I'm going Matt Bushman. 6'5", 240 pounds, out of BYU. Didn't play in 2020, but he's been a 3-year starter at BYU with over 1,700 receiving yards and 9 touchdowns. So he's averaging well over 500 yards through 3 years at BYU. A little bit older. That's going to be a knock against him. He's 25. And when you get a player like that, he has the medical because he missed all of 2020. You have, is he at his ceiling because he's, upwards of 5 years older than some of the other tight ends in this class. But he's a natural receiver. His route running is smooth. You saw at BYU for, I think, honestly, in 2018 and 2019, before the whole Zach Wilson explosion, he might have been their best playmaker on the offensive side of the ball in terms of skill position players. And you don't get that in tight ends a whole lot of times. So if you can get past the negatives and understand, you're going to be getting him in the 7th and 6th round, but you're going to be a guy that has an upside of being a tight end 2 sooner than later, I think there's going to be some value there. So that's why he's my tight end 9. And my pro comparison from him is Max Williams. Now, that's not necessarily saying when Max Williams was coming out of college, because Max Williams debatably was one of the top tight ends in that class. But when you look at what Max Williams can do, great receiver, nice big body, willing blocker, and I think that's something that you can get with Matt Bushman, where Max Williams right now is more of a depth tight end on the Arizona Cardinals, and that's what you get for Bushman as a rookie. Tight end number 8 is one of the most polarizing players for a good reason in this draft, and that is going to be Zach Davidson, 6'7", 245 pounds, out of Central Missouri. Now, I'll say this right now, he also is like a fringe draftable punter. He won records at all conference at tight end and at punter, but we're more so going to be focusing on him as a tight end, where in 2019, because they didn't play last year, he dominated. Almost 900 yards. I think he had 15 touchdowns, and that's exactly the kind of production you want to see when you're talking about a player that the negatives are there, the level of competition. Central Missouri, couldn't tell you any other player that's ever played there. You know what I'm saying? So when you get a guy like that, that's 6'7", 245, 15 touchdowns, you start to be, you get thinking of okay, Dallas Goedert dominated like that, and he's pretty damn good. Obviously, maybe not to the extent that we're going to be talking about Zach Davidson, but I do think 5th, 6th round, you're getting the opportunity of a guy that, hey, there's anything that you can do. More versatility. If you can punt, sure, you're getting a guy that's obviously with that length, a red zone threat. I think he's a solid athlete. The negatives would be level of competition because it's FCS. His blocking is, he's a little bit thin. I think he probably could be like a 260 as he develops once he gets on that NFL strength and conditioning program. But for me, my pro comparison, I think right away it's going to be Donald Parham. Donald Parham, gigantic red zone threat for the Chargers. I think you're going to get something similar to that with Davidson. And at number 7 is going to be Kenny Yeboah, 6'3", 240 pounds, out of Ole Miss, formerly from the Temple Owls. We'll go to the positives, very explosive at the line of scrimmage. And I think you're getting a guy that when you look at his production for Ole Miss in their glorified air raid, he had 27 catches for 500 yards and 6 touchdowns. That's almost 20 yards a catch. So we saw explosive receiving ability, and he's a willing blocker, which is a combination that you don't get a lot for guys that are not complete tight ends, guys that aren't going in the first and second round. I definitely think there's something there for Yeboah. Now, the negatives is top-end speed. Don't have his official 40, like on the Raz website, didn't run it. So usually when something like that is a knock on film, guys are going to try to, distance themselves from running the 40, and it seems like that's undersized slightly. 6'3", length is not elite, and he's not ever going to be a guy that's going to dominate as a blocker. There are always going to be size concerns, but I do think he's a very, very nice tight end option for that. This is like the beginning of like the really good value spots, I think, for tight end in this upcoming 2021 draft. My draft grade for him is 5th round, and my pro comparison is Vikings backup tight end. I think he's tight end 2 right now on the depth chart, Tyler Conklin. And number 6, maybe the biggest mystery out of all the highly regarded tight ends in this year's class, and that's Tommy Tremble from Notre Dame, 6'4", 250 pounds. Put him in here at tight end 6. This is like one of those things where it's like more so you look around at the other draft sites and like, what are these guys seeing? What knowledge do these guys have that we necessarily, the amateurs, haven't really seen? It seems like a lot of behind the scenes really, really regard Tommy Tremble, because you look what he did at Notre Dame. I mean, so many mouths to feed from that tight end spot. He has 400 yards and 4 touchdowns in his career. But then you see the pro day numbers, you see the fact that he got an 8.9 RAS. You have a guy that is elite in vertical and broad, near elite in the 40s, a 4.65 in the 40-yard dash. So you get a guy that has immense upside for an athlete. You trust that all these scouts know what they're talking about. So I'm going to assume high ceiling. I'll be honest with you. Outside of like just looking at, a couple splash plays that we saw when he had his opportunity at Notre Dame, this is more so being like, all right, there's certain people that I trust and what they're saying about this guy. Let's see if it kind of pans out. High ceiling, the athleticism is there. The negatives, he's a career tight end 2. Was never really able to take over that tight end 1 job at Notre Dame, like dominate it. Michael Mayer, even the true freshman, very good true freshman. Felt like, anytime you're getting like jumped over by those guys, I'm a little concerned. Production wasn't necessarily there, but ultimately seems like consensus should be around 4th round draft grade. And in terms of like mystery, in terms of like, we don't really know what we're getting, I'm going to throw a Dawson Knox pro comparison because we knew Dawson Knox was a great athlete, but didn't really have that production at Ole Miss. And I feel like that's a very similar situation and a fair comp to give for Tommy Tremble. We'll kind of continue that with the mystery players. At least I saw a little bit more at the Senior Bowl, and that's Trey McKitty from Georgia, 6'5", 245 pounds. High ceiling as a complete tight end. You could see all the makings. He can block well. He can move the chains well. He's a guy that gives you maybe a little bit of juice downfield if you want to get creative with your playbook. The athleticism is there. Didn't test due to injury at Georgia's pro day. Put up 23 reps on the bench press, which is good. So what he did test in kind of matches up the fact that I do think he would have tested very well in terms of athleticism. The negatives and medical. I mean, he's banged up, had some injuries. Florida State, then he transferred to Georgia. So you want to see that all clear up. And, kind of like Tremble, production's not overly great. I mean, he has played 4 years of college football, and he has just over 600 total yards and 3 touchdowns. So you're not getting a guy that's going to be coming with a prolific receiving pedigree, but it's more so you're going to be getting a guy that you hope that you can develop. You can see the high ceiling. You can see the athleticism. You see the great base that you can build upon up into a very nice tight end. I'm going to give him a 4th round grade. He's going to be one of those guys that's going to come in, probably be a tight end 3, potentially a tight end 2 if he blows the socks out the coaches in camp. I'm going to give him a pro comparison of Ian Thomas when he's coming out of Indiana, and really what you've seen from Ian Thomas so far at the Carolina Panthers has really failed to take over for Greg Olsen, but there still has been some good there, and he definitely still has some high ceiling to develop into a potential tight end 1. I think you might get that in McKinney depending on how well your coaches can develop tight ends. At number 4, we're going BREVIN Jordan from Miami, 6'3", 245 pounds. Positives right away. He, with the ball in his hands, yards after catch, like a running back, makes guys miss, likes to run through players. And you see versatility. He's the kind of guy that can line up at tight end. He can line up in the slot. You can line him up out wide. You can line him up in the backfield. And that is really a positive when you're talking about guys that aren't necessarily going to be drafted to be your tight end one. Not talking about Kyle Pitts, you're not talking about Hawkinsons and the Noah Fant and stuff. You're getting guys that, like, wow, the more you can do as a rookie, the more spots that you could potentially chip in as depth, the more value you're going to have. And when you look at BREVIN Jordan, I mean, this slide that I made up was 2 months ago, and I was worried about the strength. I was worried a little bit about maybe potentially being underwhelming in terms of athletic testing numbers, and that was kind of the case at the pro day. Put up 17 reps on the bench press, which is not great. A 31-inch vertical, which is not great. In the agility drills, the shuttle and the 3-cone, he scored very poor. Very, very poor. Ran a 4.68 in the 40, which wasn't too bad. Straight line speed. I mean, you could see that when you watch his film at Miami, man. One of the more prolific receiving tight ends. Even last year, 2020, he had almost 600 yards and 7 total touchdowns. Was a go-to target for De'Aaron King and that Hurricanes offense. But you are a little bit worried about the play strength. Potentially niche size, 6'3". Some teams might need to move him around a little bit. But ultimately, I'm going to give him a 3rd-round grade. My pro comparison is now, I guess, the starting tight end for the Minnesota Vikings now that Kyle Rudolph has gone, and that's Irv Smith Jr. Now, I do think Irv Smith was a little bit more well-rounded, gave a little bit more in terms of blocking, but as far as what his strengths are as a receiver, I see a lot of similarities between him and BREVIN Jordan. And at number 3 is going to be Hunter Long from Boston College, 6'5", 250 pounds. I think when you look at Hunter Long, you know, we talked about Tommy Tremble, talk about Trey McKitty, guys that don't really have production, you're a little bit nervous of what they're going to do. Don't have to worry about that with Hunter Long. 2019, 500 yards receiving, 2 touchdowns. 2020, 57 catches for almost 700 yards and 5 touchdowns. Over the last 2 years, hasn't been a more productive tight end in the ACC than him. So if you're worried, if you're a little skeptical about some of these players that only have like 100 yards, 200 yards, Hunter Long should ease that just a little bit. And he's a good athlete as well. At his pro day, putting up an 8.6 RAS. You saw a good broad jump. You saw the 4.71's not amazing, but the split was good. Great explosion off the line of scrimmage. You have a guy that has very excellent hands, knows how to find the soft spots on the defense. The negatives, potentially his play strength, does not pop like a guy that's going to be throwing up a lot of pancakes at the edge of the line of scrimmage there. That's also blocking is going to be a negative. But ultimately, if you want a proven receiver that's a good athlete, that's going to be around the 2nd, 3rd round. My pro comparison for him is Jordan Cameron. Remember Jordan Cameron for the Cleveland Browns? I think Hunter Long's absolutely a kind of guy that can take his stat lines in college. 500-600 yards, 5-6 touchdowns is somewhere in that range. That is the same production I think he can hit in the NFL. And that is why I do think you'll get something like that 2nd round. Maybe I probably would feel a little bit more comfortable drafting him in the 3rd. And at number 2 is going to be Pat Fryermuth from Penn State, 6'5", 260 pounds. He's coming in at tight end 2. Reality probably should be tight end 1 because our tight end 1, I don't think it's fair to keep him in that box known as just tight end. But Fryermuth, very good. Most complete tight end in the class. You want a tight end that can do everything. Can catch, can run, good athlete. Probably not great athlete. That's one of my negatives. I wouldn't be shocked if he was running, you know, high 4.7s, somewhere in that range potential, which is not bad. You know, wouldn't give him a red grade if you're looking at the RAS scores or would make him a bust or anything like that. But he's just not a guy that's going to win with his athletic abilities, say, like Mike Gesicki was at Penn State a couple years ago. But in terms of blocking, hands, everything you need a tight end to do in today's NFL, he can do it. He has excellent hands, soft hands, not a lot of issues with drops. I think the negatives kind of yak, yards after catch, doesn't make a lot of extra yards, kind of Zach Ertz-y in that regards. He'll get you what you get you, but you might not be able to, you know, pad your stats if you're a quarterback by dumping it out to Fryermuth and expect him to break a couple tackles and go 30, 40 yards downfield. But ultimately, if you want a tight end that can do it all, you're not looking for a guy that's just a glorified wide receiver of the position, Fryermuth is going to be your guy. I think he potentially, if he tested it, there was a combine and he shocked people with his athletic ability, could have stuck into the 1st round, but I think ultimately I have a very solid 2nd round grade for Fryermuth. My pro comparison for him is Hunter Henry. At tight end number 1, surprise, surprise, it's Kyle Pitts, 6'6", 245 pounds, out of the greatest football school in all of college, the Florida Gators. He's my tight end 1. If you just look down at the bottom, though, I'm comparison. My pro comp's Mike Evans. I don't know. He's an offensive weapon. He's a unicorn. They use that word a lot when you describe Kyle Pitts because there's just nothing like him. An elite receiver, alpha, see ball, get ball. You know, the fact that he just straight up went to his pro day, ran a 4.44 at 6'5", almost 6'6", 245 pounds. It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. Negatives in blocking. He's not a bad blocker, but obviously he's not going to be a strength of his game. Play strength could get better. I think he's a little thin. I think when you look at him, you're like, all right, this guy here could probably bulk up at least 10 pounds, 10, 15 pounds, probably will do so, at least hopefully if it doesn't negatively affect his speed and his explosiveness and his fluidity. But I definitely think that's something that could potentially happen. But Kyle Pitts is amazing. I genuinely can't think of it. If we're classifying, we're putting him in this bubble as just a tight end, I can't think of it. And obviously he's made it a little bit biased because I've literally seen every snap he's played over the last 2-3 years. But I can't remember call a tight end that was that dominant. Honestly, I'm thinking like, even looking back at stats to try to like refresh, like Jermaine Gresham when he's with the Sam Bradford and those guys in Oklahoma, he's like kind of the only other guy that was dominating like Kyle Pitts, and Kyle Pitts is like 10 times the athlete that Jermaine Gresham was. So I think generally my draft, he's a top 5 player overall in this draft class. I think I probably would have him. You know, you gotta put Trevor Lawrence at 1. You know what I'm saying? You have to have, like, if you don't, that's just like almost football hipstery. If you want to like stick your neck on the line that much. But I think he's probably my second best player overall in this year's draft class. And I don't know, man. I'm hoping now that I'm looking at this draft, I could see if Kyle Pitts slips past, you know, if Atlanta doesn't like him at 4, you know, and you don't have the Bengals get him. I think the Bengals are going to be more so in Jamar Chase or Sewell. And if he could slip past, you know, there's a chance Philly could still get him. I hope Philly gets him. I absolutely, because he'd be wide receiver 1 on the Philadelphia. Oh my God, why did we trade at 6? I would have been happy at 6 with Jamar. Like, it's one of those things. I don't want to turn this tight ends ranking video into another C4 Eagles rant, but like with Philadelphia sitting at 6, there was always going to be that disgust, and I'm sure I'd probably throw something on my draft stream if Jamar Chase went at pick 5 to Cincinnati. But I would be very accepting of the runner-up prize of getting Kyle Pitts at 6, just knowing what he could do for our offense. And I'm sure Dallas or something very annoying will pick him right before Philly. Like, he'll start to slip a little bit. I'll get my hopes up, and Philly will just end up getting like J.C. Horn or something that's just very whelming. I'm not going to say J.C. Horn's underwhelming, but it'd be very a whelming selection as we watch most likely Kyle Pitts and probably Patrick Surtain go right before the Philadelphia Eagles select. But either way, turn this all around. He is easily my tight end 1, if that is how you want to classify him. I think he's Mike Evans. Ultimately, I could not find a tight end comparison. I mean, like, for what he does, you know, he's not a Kittle. He's not a Travis Kelce, but he's going to be as dangerous as a Kittle or a Travis Kelce. I mean, stylistically, for his build, you know, maybe Mike Gesicki. And Gesicki's been kind of heating up lately for the Miami Dolphins, but, like, he's better than Mike Gesicki. I think ultimately just blow what his position is out the water. He's Mike Evans. And I want Mike Evans. He's probably even a faster Mike Evans. I don't think Mike Evans ran a 4.44, even though it is your pro day 40-yard dash times. Either way, Kyle Pitts, tight end 1, and that will do it for the tight end rankings. Let me know what you guys feel with these in the comment section below. We'll be back probably, I don't want to say tomorrow is going to be another rankings, but I might just do all the offensive linemen tomorrow. That's a slightly anticlimactic Friday upload. But knowing that, that's just going to give me more time, because now, look, right now it's 1 o'clock. Usually, I'm recording from 11 to 4 on a video. I'm able to finish these draft ranking videos in about an hour and a half, an hour. So that still gives me like 3 to 4 hours of working time to work on this new Madden series. I'm going to be able to do that today. I'm going to be able to do that Friday. So hopefully I don't disappoint with this now pretty hyped up video, because I got a YouTube notification that I only got 12 new subscribers in the entirety of the last 30 days. So hopefully this new series can bring C4's channel back to life. But hope you guys enjoy the rankings. And yeah, I guess I also spoiled that I will be doing a draft stream here on YouTube for the 2021. So if you want to come see my live reactions, it's going to be a good time. It's going to be a fun time. And I'll see you guys then. Thanks for watching, and peace out.